Hello and welcome to Unalaska This Week. We have a very special program this week. The school is celebrating the 160th anniversary of education in Unalaska. And we're in the school library right now with Ray Hudson. And Ray, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you formulated this idea.
I'd be happy to, Penelope. Last summer I was at the Library of Congress for just a day, and they have a wonderful collection of Alaskan church archives of the Orthodox Church. And among the records, I came across an enrollment sheet signed by Veniaminoff, the priest who was at Unalaska, dated 1825, that was the initiation of the first school at Unalaska.
I see.
And with that, I thought it would be nice when March rolled around. It gave us plenty of planning time to have a celebration for the 160th anniversary of the school that he started. It actually turns out that there was a school here earlier.
Right.
Dr. Lydia Black translated another document that I had Xeroxed at the Library of Congress. It was a list of some pastoral duties that an early priest undertook here in 1807. And included in that is a list of about 20 students in a school. But we don't know what kind of school it is or was, who started it, what was taught, and so on. So we're still going with the 160th. Yeah.
And you've planned quite a week of activities for this now, haven't you?
It's been very busy. We started out with the book fair Monday and Tuesday for school students, and we sold a lot of books, so there's a lot of good reading material that was made available.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Black has been in town since Saturday, and she's been teaching a university course every evening, and we've had a very nice crowd for that here in the library. She's met with different groups of students and done some of her own work while she's here.
Right.
Let's see, in addition, for several months now, the bilingual multicultural classes and other classes have been working on a quilt that has a square, an embroidered square for every decade since 1825. And that's been completed and will be hanging here in the library for people to look at.
That's a beautiful quilt, too.
Yeah,
they
it
put
turned
a
out
lot
very
of work
nice.
into it.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Well, now in the library we have a number of exhibits here. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about what we've got going on
Well, there are
here.
quite a few. Right behind us is this exquisite Kamleka that Marty McCaslin has allowed to be exhibited here at the school.
Yes.
It's really a very fine work, and we're awfully pleased to have it on display so that people can see it and learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
There are, in the other display case here, there are the model of the Badarki made by Sergei Savarov that was also donated by a public health nurse a number of years ago. And there are several other display cases around that contain old items of various interest.
Mm-hmm.
And then up around the edge of the library, there's a timeline that runs from 1825 to 1985 and points out student enrollment and other events that happen to be going on. For example, in 1840 here, a 6,000-word Aleut dictionary was prepared. It wasn't printed, but the entries were all prepared. There's some interesting photographs. This one people might want to look at if they get over to the library. It's the only interior photograph of the second church, the church that was built in 1858.
I see.
That has been found. It's the only photo that's been found so far. And Dr. Black and Father Gromoff took it down to the Church of the Holy Ascension earlier this week and compared some of the icons and some of the small pieces of wood to make sure that it was, in fact, what it says it is, and it is.
Fascinating.
Well, the timeline goes all the way around through the purchase of Alaska, through the formation of the first American government school here by a teacher named Rapinski back in, well, when was it? 1885. Yeah, I have to look at the timeline. 1885, and on up until the present. Some of the things are sort of fun. In 1900, there were 8,000 people on the beach here waiting for the ice to clear up north. So they
8,000?
8,000, so they could get up to Nome for the gold rush. 5,000 people watched a ball game. So that probably hasn't been repeated.
I would say not.
One other thing I might mention is that we do have the original petition for the incorporation of the city of Unalaska that was drawn up in 1941. That's on display here also.
Right, now, and the signatures, there's quite a few signatures on there, and that was pretty much most of the population of the town at that time, was it not?
Well, I haven't counted the signatures, but the petition says there were 400 people in town
Mhm.
at that time.
Yeah, that's quite
Yeah.
a bit.
Mhm.
Well, this has been a very educational week, celebrating
been,
education in Unalaska. I know it's been a lot of work, and you deserve certainly commendation for all the time and
Well,
effort you've put into it.
It's been nice to do.
Been fascinating.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much, Ray.
You're welcome.
As part of this 160th anniversary celebration, Dr. Lydia Black came to Unalaska, and we had a conversation with her. Dr. Black, a social anthropologist who received her PhD from the University of Massachusetts, is one of the foremost scholars of the Russian era of Aleut history. Respected author of several books, her persevering inquiries into and translations of original Russian documents from the 18th and 19th centuries have contributed greatly to our understanding of that transitional chapter in Aleutian history. In talking with Dr. Black, I found her to be a fascinating and valuable source of historical detail. Each time I met with her, I learned something new. For example, no church in Unalaska ever burned down. Dr. Black firmly asserts that the first church simply deteriorated in the Aleutian weather and another one was built. Soft-spoken but quite animated, she speaks nonetheless as an authoritative historian. Where are you from? Kiev.
Yeah, I was born in Kiev. Kiev in Russia, in the Soviet Union.
Mm-hmm.
And my family were styled in the Soviet Union enemies of the people. I grew up as a daughter of an enemy of the people. And when the war broke out, of course, Ukraine was occupied by the Germans, and I was taken to work in a factory. And in 1945, at the end of March, first week of April, I found myself in an area that was occupied by American troops. And that was that.
So you took your chance and...
Yeah. And in 1950, I came to the United States. And for the most part, I lived in New England. And my husband died. I was left with 4 children. And the only thing I knew what to do was to be a scholar, so I went back to school and got my PhD union ticket.
Union ticket, huh?
Mm-hmm. Union ticket.
And where are your children now?
Oh, 3 are married. They're all scattered. One lives in Scotland, one lives in Wisconsin, one's in Cape Cod, and the baby is a freshman at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C.
I see.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you studied in colleges in the eastern part of the United States, right?
That's right.
And you got a degree in social anthropology?
That's correct. From University of Massachusetts Amherst.
Well, now that's a long way from the Aleutians. How did you get involved with things Aleutian?
My geographical speciality is circumpolar, and teaching on the circumpolar area, I found that there was nothing in English that I would care my students to read, and I began preparing lectures. After doing that for 3 years, I found that I was doing research, and being an anthropologist, I said I have got to see the place firsthand. So I come out here in 75, and I stuck.
So you're now teaching at the University of Alaska at Fairbanks, is that right?
That's right. I'm a visiting professor there, but the chancellor has invited me to join permanent faculty, and I accepted, and in September I will move to Alaska.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Well, it will be good to have a scholar of your capability and interest here working
University
on
of
the...
Alaska has pretty good number of first-rate scholars in many disciplines.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I'm referring specifically to here, studying, what's going on out here in this area. You're very well qualified to be doing this, being as you speak and read Russian. How have you been able to get a hold of some of these documents that have given a lot of the background of the history of what's gone on here since the Russian contact?
Well, United States archives have an enormous amount of historical and documentary material. In the National Archives, papers of the Russian-American Company, which were transferred to the United States when Alaska was transferred to the United States. Alaska Orthodox Church records, Um, they are in Washington in the Library of Congress. About 1,500, or give or take 100 or so, archival boxes. And I understand that it's 999 microfilm rolls now of the Alaska Russian Orthodox Church collection. And those records for Kodak go back to the first days of establishment of the Orthodox mission at the end of the 18th century. There are other archives. Udin Archive in the Library of Congress that has a lot of very interesting early material. Mm-hmm. And then in the Soviet Union, they have been publishing compendia of archival documents pertaining to Alaska. And I work with those published materials.
Mm-hmm. So there's quite a bit of material if one
yes.
can translate it.
Oh, yes.
Now, you've written several books also about the area. One of them was Aleut Art.
That's right.
It's a beautiful, beautiful book. And you traveled quite a bit to gather the information for this book. Maybe you could tell us a few things you found in your travels.
Well, the problem with this was that most books on arts of Native Americans have perhaps one paragraph in Aleuts which says the Russians came, destroyed Aleut culture, there is no Aleut art, period. There's a book by Fader, very prominent scholar of Native American art, that says exactly that. He has one paragraph.
Is that right?
That's right. And I would like to let you know that book came out after my book was published.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And the Aleuts were very well aware that they had artistic tradition, but they were also very well aware that nothing is left in the jail.
And well, as part of the 160th anniversary, there's quite a collection over in the school right now. And as we looked at some of them the other day, in the cases there, I was amazed to see some of the things that are there.
Those are mostly models, and they're contemporary ones. This is a model of an Aleut drum used to accompany the dancers in the festivals. The picture is again from Sauer. It's a composite. The masks have appeared in Sarachev Atlas. They were done by Luka Voronin. The rest of the picture, especially the human figure, that's probably from Kodiak Island, and it's much doctored and distorted. And in front of it is a halibut hook, a model of one. Bundles of grass and examples of grass weaving, and baskets, and a small basket in progress, done by the contemporary weavers. The doll was made by the late Sophie Pletnikov of Unalaska, and Sophie tried to recreate a true model of the Aleut waterproof shirt made of gut, and she seems to have succeeded very well, because she indicates the border at the bottom. That border made of sealskin, very often colored in various colors, was done to keep the hem from fraying in the wind.
Mm.
And the seams were decorated with red finch feathers, hair of sea lions or seals, tufts of hair, and the gray hairs of old people. Also by inserting over the seam tiny strips of skin in various colors. Those kamleikas were very, very colorful, and Sophie did it shortly before her death, and she tried to recreate the appearance. She also tried to recreate the watertight seam, and all in all, I think it's a pretty good model.
And what is this here? Is this like a purse or a...
This is modern. In the ancient times, the Aleut women had a bag that technically in anthropological literature is called housewives. They were made of skin, highly decorated, and the skin segment, rectangular, was folded 3 times, so they do look like purses.
Now, you also have a book on Atka,
Yes.
and
Well, it's sort of a fallout. I translated the journals of Yakov Nitzvetov. He was the first Orthodox priest to serve in the Western Aleutians. And he was an Aleut himself. His mother was from Atka. He grew up in St. George, and until 18 years of age, he was an ordinary sealer in St. George. And then his father took him to Irkutsk, where he went to the seminary. And 4 years later, he was a consecrated priest. And in doing the translation and researching the documents, trying to get biographical data on Yakov Nitzvetov, I translated quite a lot of documents pertaining to the Western Aleutians, Atka, Adak, Rat Islands, the 2 Commander Islands. And Professor Pierce decided that I should write a collection of essays on the ethnohistory of Western Aleutians, which I did.
so you have quite an interest in this area and in things Aleutian, don't you?
I do.
I could tell when you're talking about some of this stuff there, it's just a little sparkle in your eye, like it's just, you're on home base when you're talking about this,
Absolutely.
aren't you?
Absolutely.
Now, you just are working on another translation here on a document that is from 1807 that Ray Hudson at the school found when he was in Washington, D.C.
Yes, he was looking through the boxes pertaining to Unalaska Parish in the manuscript division of Library of Congress and the Alaska Church Collection, and he saw this document, which is incidentally not listed properly in the new inventory that Library of Congress put out for the collection. At great cost, I must say. But he saw that it was a register of names, and the date on it was 1807, so just on general principles he Xeroxed it, and it turned out the most fascinating document. It is a record compiled by Yeramon Gideon, who was in Kodiak from 1805 to 1807, as his charge was to investigate the situation in Alaska under Varanov's management in regard to the native people and the situation of the Orthodox Church. And he reported directly to the Metropolitan of Moscow and also to the Emperor. And he was traveling from Kodiak back to St. Petersburg aboard the vessel Lisitka, and they came into port, and he stayed here less than a week, 6 days, from July 1 through July 6, 1807. And people came from outlying villages, from other islands, to have their children chrismated. In the Orthodox Church, a layperson can baptize, but then a person undergoes the sacrament of chrismation. It is like becoming part of the church forever. And he chrismated over 150 persons, mostly young children, including about 30 students in a school that the then manager, Fyodor Burenin, apparently conducted here. And the interesting thing is that the students were both boys and girls. And the Orthodox Church educated girls too. It was not only for boys.
That's kind of that's different than a lot of the other churches.
And then the poor man performed 42 marriages.
A week in the life. He was a busy man while he was here.
That is right. And then about 50 persons came to confession and underwent the ceremony of being anointed with myrrh and oil, because he didn't have antimins. Antimins is a cloth on which is painted the icon of Christ's burial and resurrection, and this is what makes the altar. And the liturgy on which communion is administered can be celebrated only when the priest has an antimony. He didn't have it, but people came and asked to be confessed. And so he confessed them and then administered the ceremony of anointing with oil. But the most interesting thing in this document was that the chief of Umnak from Nikolsky village came, and he was about 60 years old, and he is registered in the name Ivan Stepanovich Glotov. And there is a record of the nephew of the allied chief of southwestern Umnak with the name of Shashuk. The nephew's name was Mushkal, being baptized in Kamchatka with Stepan Glotov standing as his godfather to the name of Ivan Stepanovich Glotov at the age of 12 or 13. They estimated his age in 1759.
Well, that must be one of the joys of scholarship, is when you're able to piece those things together.
It was very exciting to see that he came in his Baidarka from Nikolsky to the harbor here to give his confession to the visiting priest. It was very exciting for me to see that.
I bet. Well, you say that he didn't have the proper things to actually have the right ceremony. Was there not a church here in 1807?
No. There was a chapel. There was a lay chapel. But there was no priest. The services were what we today call reader services, conducted by laymen. Orthodoxy can survive very nicely without a priest being present. It's some people call it folk religion, but it's nevertheless it's very deeply felt religious experience. There was a chapel here dedicated to Holy Ascension of Christ. It was built in 1808 after Gideon's visit by Fyodor Burenin, and I believe that some of the icons from the chapel are in the church.
I see.
Today.
In Orthodoxy, it took such root here and stayed here such a long time, and it's still a viable religion here. Were there chapels and churches on all the islands here ultimately?
On most, yes.
Yep.
Akun, Akutan, Tigalda, the Kashiga village, Chernovsky village, Makushin village, and Bjorka and Sidanka, just to name a few. Every village had a lay chapel.
So they didn't necessarily need the priest, as you mentioned earlier. They could
That's right.
just carry on with their chapel. Well, what's your next major project? I know you must have something going on.
To get some rest.
Yeah, I can see that. It's been a long week, and it's not quite over with yet. But in terms of your studies, do you have any other major projects that you're working on?
I'm considering several. I would like to write a solid account of Russian period in Alaska that would be both scholarly and yet ordinary educated lay persons could read it and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know when I'm going to find the time to do it.
Yeah, that would be...
So many people are asking me to look up their ancestors and whatnot. I'm saying I'm going to open a genealogical bureau.
Yeah. We'd like to thank Dr. Black for spending some time with us on this program. This celebration of 160 years of education in Unalaska was a valuable learning experience for the many Unalaskans who attended the lecture series and also saw the exhibit in the library. It also proved an inspiration to Martin McCaslin, who donated the Kamlaika that you see in the library and his entire collection of Aleutian artifacts to the school. We're going to close our program now with some highlights from the final evening's festivities. Thank you for watching, and we hope you've enjoyed this special production of Channel 8.
It's always been my feeling that these artifacts, like the Kimlaika, are not to put on one's wall in their house. You can put pictures on your wall. They're for the young to learn from, and I see this interest, this renewed interest going, and in the community. I mean, I've never seen this many people come. You know, this is interested in prehistory and the historic times. So it's just my honor to be able to donate the Kamlaika officially to the school at this time, and the rest of the collection is coming back.